alternative sources of water and maybe a better approach than the way we do things today, which is really kind of, as Eric said, one of the reasons why we founded the company. Tell me this first one was going to be difficult. Let's see if I can get it.
You may have to hit it 3 or 4 times. There we go.
This is kind of today's approach, a centralized approach, where we draw our water sources from our groundwater supply, our rivers and streams. We treat it with chemicals, and then we transport it long distances. In Birmingham, the statistic is 22% of that water is lost in transit between the plant and our homes. There's also a tremendous amount of energy associated with that transit. Most people don't think when they open up their spigot or their faucet that there's energy associated with that, and there's quite a bit in some places. In fact, Austin, Texas, 60% of all of Austin, Texas's energy use is on the water purification and transit. So there's energy associated with that to pump that water long distances, particularly if it's in a mountainous, or hilly region. And we treat all water equal. So whether it's going, into our mouths, or whether it's going into our toilets, or whether it's going into our dirt, generally that's been the approach to our water, is that all water is the same. And so once that water falls on our property, in terms of rainwater, the approach has been to get it away from our buildings as quickly as possible. Here we've got, a storm drain, or rather a gutter or downspout pushing it away. It gets carried away by our storm drains, and then it ends up into our rivers and creeks. A lot of times here locally, that's lost in the Gulf of Mexico, so that's water never retrieved. When the natural process for that water would have been for it to fall into the soil or to the ground in its original state, it would have percolated into that soil and fed our rivers and streams naturally after a natural filtration process. Where today, it's all shoved into our rivers and creeks and lost for good. So where has this approach gotten us? Globally, there's a finite water supply. We've been very fortunate here in the Southeast in terms of our water resources until maybe just recently that we have a tremendous amount of water, but that's not the case all over the world. There are real issues. People say it could be the next oil, who knows, but there are starting to be disputes over water in other places in the world. And even here locally, not to the same extent, but we're disputing over our water rights with Georgia and Tennessee and Florida. 1 out of 6 people lacks access to safe drinking water. And again, luckily we do not have that problem here, but at the same time, we believe that we should be good stewards of our water. Other issues locally increase water and sewer rates, aging infrastructures. This is only going to continue to get worse. Birmingham sewer rates are up over 300% in the last 10 years, and they just raised water rates 13% in this past year, and I think there have been some water rate increases here locally as well. Water use restrictions have been an issue as well. Low water levels, which takes away from not only kind of our day-to-day lives, but our ability to interact and enjoy some of those waters through recreation and other things. Touching on a few of these points, so what has it done for our environment? The energy associated with it, we wasted valuable resources. We're putting a lot of chemicals and treatment into our water to make it drinking quality. In the meantime, we're depleting our water supplies, our drinking water supplies, and the water in the ground table levels, and we've starved our rivers and streams. This picture here at the bottom is what Lake Lanier looks like today in Atlanta. Borrowed a couple of local photos too from Eric to show, but this is the Salgahatchee Creek near Northside, and as you can see, another impact on the environment is that water is ripping out the sides of our rivers and creeks and causing all kinds of issues. It's also filling our rivers and creeks up with sediment, with chemicals from our fertilizers and whatnot that we're using on our yards and our plants. And it's even using even more energy because we're having to treat that water through some of our stormwater treatment plants and whatnot as well. Here are a few more pictures displaying that. Here is the sediment entering Yates Lake from the Salgahatchee. So this was, I guess, near a construction site, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, and then this is the impact here as it enters. And this is, erosion and some of the issues it's causing, or caused by that we're at Shelton Mill Road. So where will the water come from? Is there a better approach? to the way we're doing things? And the answer, we think, is absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of water that's on tap, and it's right at our fingertips. We're bathing in it. It's under our noses, and there are other sources. And so the beginning of that process would be to treat water as two sources, potable and non-potable water sources. There's a lot of money being invested throughout the country, particularly here in the Atlanta region, the Birmingham region, maybe potentially here locally as well, in expanding our water supplies to keep up with growth. And we're going after some of the old processes, and that is to build, when there are efficiencies that can be gained through toilets and shower heads and rain capture and gray water use that would really allow us to extend those construction projects out years, if not decades. Restore the natural processes where, instead of pushing that water away from our homes, allow it to feed our groundwater supply, allow the ground to be a natural filter, to keep our rivers and streams at their natural levels. Through putting that water either through rain gardens or through bioswales or through rainwater catchment to reuse that water and put it back into the groundwater supply. And in the process, save the energy, the water in the watershed, and the financial benefits as well in terms of reduced water use and the cost of that water use, as well as the sewer rates some have experienced for irrigation, but certainly for toilet flushing and gray water. A paradigm shift in the way that we look at our buildings today. Typically they're consumers, but can a building be a water generator? Can we harvest that water or treat it like a water farm in terms of there's all this water that can be captured and utilize that water at the point of the source, which is a concept we like to push, versus this approach where we're trying to carry the water long distances, but use what you have where you can capture it, and then look to the outside sources. And so what type of water do we use for our toilet flushing or for our irrigation? Can we capture the point of source? Only 10% of our drinking water, or only 10% of the water used in the home is for drinking and in the kitchen. So that leaves 90% of other uses that we could get water from some of those other sources. Tens of thousands of gallons run off our roof. Tens of thousands more, what we like to call gently used or gray water, are coming from our bathroom sinks, our showers, and our washing machines, and that's at each individual home that can be used. And in the end, our buildings can be net generators instead of net consumers of water potentially. Going into rain harvesting specifically, these are some of the overall benefits. While I'm thinking about it as well, we've got some brochures on the back table, and they list out some of these benefits, and feel free to take some of those. If we run out, I have a few more as well. But reduces the need to tap into municipal water supply, which is a big issue, particularly during drought periods. Reduced energy for pumping and purifying. We've talked on some of these things, preventing soil erosion and runoff, and then reducing sediment and chemicals into the watersheds. Additional benefits. There are LEED points for some of these projects. For any building that's going after LEED accreditation, water is certainly one of the issues that we want to consider. In today's home market, but particularly in the future, we feel like that homes with green products and services in them will differentiate themselves in the marketplace and at some point become really common. And it's an insurance against watering restrictions. If you invested a tremendous amount of money in your landscaping, we promote efficient landscaping, irrigation with drip and whatnot, but this is an opportunity to capture some of that rainwater and to be able to water your plants effectively, maybe in periods where you might not be able to otherwise. And plants love rainwater. They like it better than chlorinated city water, and they really thrive off of it. So it's great for gardeners and people that really want their plants to thrive with that. The impact is up to 40% of homes water used in the south during the summers for irrigation. And so not only are we using a tremendous amount of water for irrigation, and I think it's kind of like our cars, I think it's going to be hard to rip some of the lawns out of our houses in the southeast because we love them too much, but we can certainly change some of our practices, and it really creates peak demand issues as well for water authorities, because a lot of that water is used in the summertime. They're building their infrastructure and their capacity to meet that peak demand, But if you're helping to level that out with rainwater harvesting and using some of that water for irrigation, that's really going to help from a municipal perspective as well. A 2,000 square foot rooftop can collect over 1,200 gallons of water with a 1-inch rain and over 68,000 gallons a year in the state of Alabama. So 55, 56 inches of annual rainfall, and that's what you get. So there's really a tremendous opportunity. So we are all for, like I said, the water efficient toilets and shower heads and things like that. And we really feel like you can get a tremendous amount of water through your gray water systems, through your rain harvesting systems. And we'll give some examples I'll give some examples a little later. My partner's not here with us tonight, of some numbers that can prove that out. Applications and mandates around the world. Australia has really been a leader in a lot of these rain harvesting products because it's been mandated there due to their severe drought. Any newly constructed home or significantly renovated home has to have a rain harvesting system, and they're using that water for washing their clothes, for irrigation, for basically all non-potable uses. Similar practices in Bermuda, India, and Germany's really been a leader through some of their design with some of the products as well. The city of Santa Monica, which held the ARCSA conference this year, just passed a regulation that you have to capture the first 3/4 inch of rainfall onto your property, regardless. That's not new construction, that's all existing properties. And so they've actually implemented a rain harvesting rebate program as well to assist in that. But the main thing there is, all of that water, they're close to the ocean, all that water, the stormwater runoff is going directly in the ocean. And if you get 3/10 of an inch of rain anywhere in Orange County, you can't go in the ocean, it's not safe. And so they're really trying to keep the water out of the storm drains and also to be able to reuse it. Austin, Texas, and Raleigh, North Carolina have also implemented rain harvesting programs in their cities. So this is kind of the basic design to think of with rainwater harvesting. This is not a new concept. This has been done for thousands of years. Civilizations, in some instances, were actually built upon capture of water. Obviously, it's the lifeblood of our existence. There have been wars that have been fought over it. And, some people in the industry like say it's really just skipped a generation. A lot of our parents or grandparents did this at their homes, particularly if it was in a rural setting where they had a cistern at their house or their farmhouse. So it's not rocket science, it's not a new concept, but there are new products on the market that are really starting to make this more effective and both feasible and cost effective. So you've got your collection area, which is essentially your rooftop. In this instance, that could also be a parking lot or other surfaces that don't absorb the water. A storage facility of a cistern or a tank, or a rain barrel. Gutters, something to capture the water and the pipes associated with that. And then obviously a filter or screen to keep out some of the leaves, mosquitoes, other issues you might have in capturing and storing that water. Important elements of design, kind of sizing of the system. Again, we gave the stat earlier, a lot of people don't realize just how much water is going to come off a rooftop. We love people to do rain barrels because we think it's a great starter point for them to realize that, well, I could add a second or third or fourth barrel because I've got a lot of water coming off my roof. And maybe they'll move up to a system or a tank and realize that, we sell rain barrels. We think they're fantastic, particularly for hand water. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But sizing of the system is important in kind of understanding the overflow and the amount of water that's going to come off your rooftop. Water quality, is your tank going to get sunlight in it? Is it going to prevent algae growth? What else is going to get in your tank? First flush device kind of falls in that category as well. And really what you're using your water for, they're not always necessary, certainly not for a rain barrel or hand watering garden. If you're bringing it into your house for washing clothes or some things like that, you may want to take some extra steps. Wet versus dry system, that's just kind of an example before where the water drops in the top of the tank. There are also designs where you're going to have a wet line where there's going to be water held in that line, and it's the pressure of the water is going to push it up into the tank. Those are done more out west. Mosquitoes, certainly here in the south, is something you want to be aware of and keep out all the entry points to the tank closed or well screened. There's also tablets you can drop in if necessary if you've got a mosquito issue. And then safety and security is a big one, particularly kind of in the school setting, which we'll get to as well. You want to make sure that people aren't drinking water out of a spigot that's rainwater. You want it to be well marked. You want to make sure your lids on You don't want your neighbor's cat to get in and die. That's not going to help your rainwater quality either, and that's actually happened. Some instances of that. You don't want people pumping it over. These barrels, particularly the cisterns, can be very heavy. Once they get in water, we've got one at my house. When it's full of water, it's 9,000 pounds. So, on to rain barrels. It's an affordable starting point. Smaller volumes of water, mostly hand watering, so you're not going to have a tank associated with that. These are all examples. We sell these bottom 2 barrels here. We're about to start selling this one as well. This is actually a box. It holds 75 gallons versus the 65 that this one holds. This is the Great American Rain Barrel product. This is just an old whiskey barrel that's been retrofitted and reused, which we get out of Kentucky. So this is a great starting point. It's an effective way, and if you've got one downspout you want to collect from and do hand watering, that's a great place to begin. Above ground systems. These come in all shapes and sizes, really. Here you see a corrugated metal tank with kind of a nifty little overflow feature. This is the Kubiszyn product here, which is an Australian product, which is one of our main residential lines. It comes with a first flush and a matching pump kit and all that stuff, and it's kind of a plug-and-play system. This is the slim line. It's a 620-gallon tank, so it sits up really nicely up next to a house. They also have other tanks and sizes, which we'll show a little bit here as well. But features of the above-ground system, so there's a larger capacity there than obviously a rain barrel. You've got some opportunities for advanced screening and filtering, particularly if you're, as I said, bringing that water into the house, or maybe you're tying it to an irrigation system that's got a more sensitive drip irrigation system. Typically associated with pressurized pumps, either an external pump as shown here, or a submersible pump down in the tank. And this is really great because it's a large enough quantity to be a replacement of potable water systems for a number of things, whether it's toilet flushing or tying it directly to an irrigation system, which we're starting to do a good bit. And our approach to that is, okay, if you've got a large irrigation system that's using a tremendous amount of water, our first thought is, well, why are you using so much water, and why do you have such a large irrigation system? But we try not to push too hard on that. So that's that's important as well in terms of working with irrigation folks. And a lot of people don't realize when they put an irrigation system in their house, particularly in some parts of Birmingham and Mountain Brook or Homewood or Vestavia, where we're doing some of these systems, I'm going to use how many gallons of water a month? I mean, it's a tremendous amount when you start to talk about 12, 14, 20 zones. But you can still do rainwater harvesting on those systems, but let's make your first source of water your rainwater. And so there's ways to automate that through valves or through or other technology where, for instance, with the Kubiszyn tank, we've got a float valve that stays closed until your tank is almost empty, and then it pulls the valve open. It starts to fill up with rainwater just enough to where you can run your irrigation system, and then it leaves your tank mostly empty, so you've got that space to collect your rainwater. So there are ways to automate that as well. And another great thing about some of these above-ground cisterns is that people can see what you're doing. We actually have done a home in Mountain Brook, and they wanted it right by their front door, and I was a little bit surprised by that. And they want all their friends to see what they're doing. One of them works in water policy, and the other one is a landscape architect. And so, it's a great demonstration site. Maybe not so much at homes, but it's something we're doing at the school. And so, let people know and see what you're doing. Do below-ground systems as well. And so these are large volumes of water, but they're out of sight, which is really good in some settings, because not everyone wants you to see, or wants people to see their cistern and a rain barrel by the front door. A little bit more expensive to install because you're digging a hole and having to fill it in and whatnot. But you can really store large quantities of water, particularly if you do some of this stuff on the front end of construction, where you're not having to dig up landscaping and other things like that. And then somewhere in between. And so these are a couple of pillow and bladder products on the market. This top one here is actually out of Atlanta. It's the Rainwater pillow that we resell and install. And so these are great because you may not want to dig a hole, and you may not want it to be seen, but you may have a deck that you can put it underneath, or you may have a crawl space. And so it's a way to get a larger capacity than a rain barrel kind of tucked away and unseen. So really depending, there are all sorts of places to store water, and with any look and feel. And so where are the places that you can utilize rainwater harvesting? We'll start with the home here, and this is kind of a basic design with an underground tank, and you can see they're using it for some of their laundry and whatnot as well. irrigation, toilet flushing, washing clothes, swimming pools, car washing, all those things that we use potable water for today that we could use our rainwater for. Schools, which we'll talk in a little more detail later, is a great place as well because there's educational opportunities there. They usually have a very large rooftop, so that's a large catchment opportunity, and tons of water needs through irrigation and toilet flushing. You can get creative with your design. You can have your kids help design. You can see a big turtle here on this tank that's been painted. It's one of the schools. This is a school in Texas that was just built this past year, and that's the little blurb here at the bottom. They're going to collect over 4.5 million gallons of water a year off of that school. So they designed a school in a dry section of Texas in the foothills outside of Austin, or in between Austin and San Antonio. And they're catching their air conditioner condensate, they're catching their rainwater, and they're catching their stormwater. And they will have plenty of water to go around with 4.5 million gallons, and you can see they're proud of it. They've got their tank right here in the front of their school. Government buildings is another place that can be incorporated, some of the same type things. The new Social Security building in Birmingham has a system similar to this one here. It's kind of like an inverted umbrella that provides shade for a courtyard area, but it's also capturing that rainwater and funneling down the middle. So there's all sorts of creative designs that you can come up with and things you can do.
Where's that at, Scott?
This is in Seattle, I think, or somewhere on the West Coast. I can get that answer for you. Yeah, the one in Birmingham is very similar to this, though, and it may actually be the exact same product. That just went in the new Social Security building downtown, but I don't have a picture of it yet. Industry is another great opportunity. Brick makers, concrete, anyone that's using a lot of water in their processes, there's an opportunity to capture that rainwater on site. Jenkins Brick is actually doing that in Birmingham as well. And you can see you can store large quantities of water, particularly in an industrial setting where appearance isn't always going to be as important. Fire prevention. The new fire station in Homewood is going to have a rain harvesting system to wash their fire trucks. In other parts of the country where they don't have access to municipal water, these systems are actually required for fire suppression. That's the case on some of the islands off of Seattle where there are 40 or 50 homes, and the insurance companies make them keep water, harvest rainwater, and keep it right there on site so they can put out their house if it catches on fire. Agriculture has long been one of the users of rainwater through retention ponds and other processes, and so there are plenty of uses for that on the farm for the animals and livestock and whatnot. And wildlife is one of the more interesting ones I never would have thought of before we got into this. This is actually kind of a large cement catch basin, and all the water funnels down here into a trough. So you can invite new species or revive species in an area, restore land. It's kind of an oasis for animals. We think there's probably some hunting applications in the state of Alabama for our product. We haven't designed that yet. Some regional success stories. This is one that my partner found that I wasn't even aware of. LaGrange Colleges apparently has a number of these systems or tanks they've put in place that are 1,000 gallons apiece. You can see they've got this little vehicle here they use for landscaping and irrigation. They pump the water from the larger tanks and the smaller tanks, and they actually go and spray on site. They've got these located all over campus. Fairfax County, Virginia, they had a rain barrel program. They didn't offer any rebates. It was just an educational push, and now they've got over 1,000 rain barrels in use there. Same thing, Cobb County, Georgia, the Water Authority distributed some educational brochures, and they've seen a real uptick there. And I mentioned earlier, Austin, Texas has a rebate program up to $500 for a cistern and $45 for a rain barrel to really promote the practice. And the municipalities themselves see the benefit of that, and that they're keeping water out of the storm drains. They're lowering the demand on their water supply. They're also, in terms of future infrastructure investments and community development in general, it's really going to help them. And so these are more pictures of products. One that I haven't mentioned that I think is real interesting, we haven't done one of these yet, but there are a couple of products out there, is this one here. And they're plastic crates that are almost like something you'd see at a grocery store, and you dig a big hole in the ground, you line it, and but that storage capacity it holds, the crate doesn't take up all the space, so about 90% of this you can store water in. And then you can put pavers or anything else over top of that. So you literally could have a back patio at your home or at a school or wherever it might be, and it would just look like a patio, but there's actually a big hole underneath it with essentially a little pond that's being held up by these crates. They're cedar tanks. They're a little more expensive. This is the rainwater hog.